Okay, this video is on graphing our polar equations. So this is actually 19 and 20 on the quiz, which everyone has, but is not mandatory homework. So let's take a look at number 19. So of course we have our graphing calculator, and you can put that in first if you would like to and see what it looks like, but I do need some specific points from you. So if we put this in our graphing calculator, 1 minus 2 cosine theta, and we hit graph and make sure you're in polar, you can see what it looks like. I need this point. You can kind of get this point off of here because you can see where it is, but I do need this point here and this point here. So you can go to table if you want to and get some points off the table, but I'm going to show you how to do it the way we did it in class. So we're going to graph this the way we graphed it back a few units ago, and if you want to rewrite this to look like how we had it with our reflection first, then our amplitude, then our vertical shift, it's just -2 cosine x plus 1, right? These are the same equations. So this is my amplitude, this is my vertical shift, tells me I'm reflected, and my period is just my normal 2 pi period for sine and cosine. So remember that tangent and cotangent have a normal period of pi, but sine and cosine have a normal period of 2 pi. So I have these 4 points I need to make sure I put on here. So if I'm 2 pi, that divided by 2 is pi, divided by 2 is pi over 2, and of course 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2 is pi, and 3 pi over 2 is my last one. That would be 4 pi over 2. My vertical shift is 1, so I have a new center line here. I'm going to just draw a dashed line. And then from there, I'm going to be going up 2 and down 2. It's reflected, so normally my cosine curve starts on a max, but this one's going to start on a minimum. So I'm down here at the min, and here I'll be crossing there. In the middle, I'll reach my max. Then I'll be back here, and I'll be back down. So my curve looks like this. And the important parts that I want to put on my polar graph are anywhere that it's not 0, that I have an actual point for. So I have a point here, 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 and here. Okay, so when I'm at 0, it's at -1, so I'm going backwards, so I'm here. When I'm at pi over 2, I am at 1. When I am at pi, I am at 3. So 1, 2, 3. 3 pi over 2, I'm at 1. And then at 2 pi, I'm at -1. So again, 2 pi is 0, right? This would also be 2 pi. And I'm going backwards. I've already got that point. Now, let's go back and look at our graph. It has this little squiggle in the middle. So when we draw it, the reason it has that is because that happens here because I'm crossing the pole. So when I cross the pole, as you can see I do in 2 places here, I kind of get that. So kind of do your best to draw it. It kind of goes like this. It goes around and then like that. So that's what I need to see. I need to see these points right here. So these points that you got from here, 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 and here on your test. You have 1 question like this. And again, you can kind of get them off this one because you can see here I'm at 1 and here I'm at 3, and that's definitely at 1 and 3. Or you can use your table. So let's look at the next one. So number 20. This one, that 3 in front of that x means I'm going through 3 cycles, right? And so if that's my b, and 2 pi over b is my period. So for this one, my period is not just 2 pi, it's 2 pi over 3. And again, I'm going to see 3 cycles. So I have to go all the way to 2 pi. I'm going to split 2 pi into thirds. So this is 2 pi over 3. This is 4 pi over 3. So there's going to be 1 sine curve here, 1 sine curve here, 1 sine curve here. So each of these has our 4 tick marks. My amplitude is 3. So I'm going up as high as 3, down as low. There's no vertical shift. And sine always starts at 0, so I'm starting here. Then I'm going to hit my max, hit the 0, hit my min, back to 0, max, 0, min, 0, max, 0, min, 0. I'm just putting the dots in so I can graph it a little bit easier. So here's my, oops, and even with my dots, I'm still not graphing it very well. Here's my curve. Okay, so there's my curve, and you can see there's 3 of them, right? Here's my first one, here's my second one, here's my third one. So again, I care about these points, the points that I have specific values for that are not at 0. So that's what I'm going to put on my polar graph. And if you want to right now put it in, we can put it in and see what it looks like. So we have 3 sine, 3 theta. Okay, so we have 3 petals. All right, so at 0, it's 0. All right, I need to know what this is, right? So if this is 2 pi over 3 and I divide it by 4, I'm going by pi over 6. So this is pi over 6. This is 2 pi over 6, or pi over 3. 3 pi over 6, or pi over 2. That's 4 pi over 6, which is that. 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, which is 3 pi over 2, 10 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. So I'm going to need to put some additional things on here too. So from 0 to pi over 2, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different divisions. So I'm dividing pi over 2 by 6, so that means I'm going by pi over 12. So this is pi over 12. This is 2 pi over 12, which is pi over 6. 3 pi over 12. 4 pi over 12, which is pi over 3. 5 pi over 12. 6 pi over 12. 7 pi over 12. 8 pi over 12. So that would be 2 pi over 3. 9 pi over 12. 10 pi over 12 is 5 pi over 6. 11 pi over 12. 12 pi over 12. 13 pi over 12. 14 pi over 12. So 14 pi over 12 would be 7 pi over 6. 15 pi over 12. 16 pi over 12. So we can keep going. I think that's probably enough in terms of our points. All right, so pi over 6, which is here, we are at 3. So 1, 2, 3. Pi over 2, we're at negative 3, so it goes backwards. 1, 2, 3. 5 pi over 6, which is here, we're at 3. 1, 2, 3. And already you can see you have enough because you know you have 3 petals. From looking at this, I have 3 petals. So anything else I do right now is going to repeat. So if I go to 7 pi over 6, which is here, it's negative, that brings me to this point. 3 pi over 2, I already have that point. 11 pi over 6, I would already have that point. So here's my 3 petals, and you're just going to draw. Remember we talked about in class, like really if you look at this, from 0 to pi over 6, which is from here to here, your radius is getting bigger. From here to here, it's getting smaller. That's why you're going back down. Here to here, it's getting bigger. You're going up. Here to here, it's getting smaller, going down. Bigger, going up, smaller, going down. So there's that one. And again, the points that we graphed, it actually only ended up being 3 because they repeated, but they were these points that we got from our graph.